Welcome everyone to another episode of Bros Who Close with Sid and myself. Fist pump. We're getting better at the fist pumps.
We're getting much better, much smoother at the fist pump.
I still have to kind of turn around and fist pump you, but it's getting a little bit better.
We'll figure this out by the episode number 50th or something. We'll figure it out. We'll put it in ChatGPT or something.
Exactly. So today we're going to talk about failure and why failure is important. Lessons that we've taken from our own failures.
Yeah.
And I think it's a great topic to talk about.
We've had a lot of failures.
We've had quite a few.
So many failures, not just in real estate, but all throughout life that's brought us to where we are today. And I think we continue to make failures. And we'll talk about why it's an important part of growth in both your business, personal life, how to bounce back from it, the lessons that need to be learned. We'll sort of relate our experiences in real estate and just life in general, right?
Yeah, I agree. I think failure is a very important part of just learning in general.
One of the best quotes of failure is, failure is a stepping stone, right?
Yeah.
I'm also going to talk about why there's ways you can avoid failure. So we'll talk about that today as well, how you can actually avoid failure, why it's not always necessary, this whole topic about you need to fail. Not necessarily you need to fail. There's ways you can actually leverage where you can avoid failure and almost fast track and find the cheat code. So, we'll talk about all of that, again, relating it to our experiences. But do you have any memories of a deal that went completely sideways and failed?
Oh, yeah. I remember this one deal. And this was, I was first starting out. Again, this is probably my second year close to my second year. I was just finishing up my first in real estate. And I had this listing, and it was just one of those markets. Market was super hot. I was negotiating a deal, and there was, we had about 6 offers on this property. So, marketed it well, did the open house, generated 6 offers, and my client really wanted me to start pushing price. And I kept doing it with the 6 agents, kept pushing. There was one agent who had come to the office with his client and a check in hand. And he was the only one out of the 6 that had done so. So I still remember he was in this office. He was waiting in the basement, and I kept pushing him for more and more and more price. And I should have probably stopped, or I should ask my client, hey, this is kind of going way over than what the last one so far. We should probably stop pushing, because at some point it's gonna start turning people off. But regardless, I was following my client's direction. We kept pushing pricing. And, at the end of it, this guy offered us a ridiculous price. And my client's like, yeah, we'll take it. And I still remember, I go down to the basement, I shake their hands, and I say, congratulations, you've got the house. And they had a really strange look in their face. As in they were shocked they got that. I thought that they were shocked that they got the house. But regardless, he had the check. I said, come on upstairs, we'll give you the signed paperwork, and then you can give us a check or whatever have you. And maybe 5 minutes went by. The guy does not come in. I texted him. And all of a sudden, from the corner of my eye, I see all 3 of them just walking past us from the office and go straight outside. And I'm chasing this guy saying, yo, where's my check? And he just says, we don't want it. And he just kept walking away.
Wow.
And he never ended up buying the house.
Wow. So what happened?
So I think, again, from the same thing, I think I should have asked my client, I should have asked my client, hey, let's not push any further, because I just felt that, all the brokers were at their edge, and, in terms of price, and everyone thought that they were way overpaying for this particular property. I should have advised them better and said hey, we should probably stop here, because we're gonna turn people off, and people are just gonna walk. And that's exactly what happened. And we ended up selling
for a lesser price.
For a lesser price, the same day. We sold it the same day for $50,000 less.
Wow.
Than what the other guy had offered. And I said to my client, hey, guys, listen, that was not a real price. That was a fake price. And my biggest learning from I consider that a failure on my part, because I should have advised my clients better to be able to, navigate that deal And I mean, regardless, we tried, but I think we could have done a little bit better. I think they would have probably paid more than what we got for it, but we just stretched them to a point where they just really got turned off, and they just left.
Yeah. I think most of my failures have been about learning from how to prepare better for the next one, right? Every single thing. My first deal, I remember I was helping one of my best friends buy a property, and everything that could go wrong in that deal went wrong, right? There was a roof leak. There was this everything wrong with the status certificate. It was a condo townhouse in Kitchener, and everything that could go wrong was going wrong. And I remember at the time thinking, why the fuck am I have to put up with all this nonsense? And then I just realized as I was in the deal, I'm like, this is probably one of the best things to happen because it'll prepare me for when things do go wrong, how to handle it, right? If you're going through life and you've never experienced any kind of setback, it doesn't have to be a drastic failure, but even if small setbacks or inconveniences, it'll never really prepare you for when you do get hit with something crazy like that deal falling apart for you, right? Like how to advise your client better next time. Did that teach you a lesson on how to advise clients moving forward?
Oh, for sure. I think that was my biggest learning is, and we had a discussion after the fact and said, hey, maybe we could have gotten another $10,000 or $15,000 more, which would have been $10,000 or $15,000 more in my client's pocket.
So that's a $15,000 cost for failure.
For failure, for sure, for them.
Yeah.
And again, for them, this is their life savings, right? They were downsizing from this massive detached home onto a condo. So, every penny mattered to them. And so that was, I think that for me, the biggest learning was that I'm the professional. I need to be advising clients better. So again, I learned from that experience, and I never let that happen again.
Yeah, and I think failure, I'll put this down. I think failure has multiple components to it, right? There's people that actually do things and they fail, and then there's people who are afraid of failure and they never want to take any sort of action. Right. And I think in real estate specifically, one of the biggest things for people, aside from starting the real estate business, is picking up the phone and calling leads or calling their own sphere or prospects in general. People are so afraid to do that because they fear, rejection.
Yeah, they fear rejection. They fear failure. They would rather sell to strangers.
Yeah.
Or at least have the notion they would rather, sell to strangers. But yeah, I mean, and I feel again like a failure is a mindset thing, right? Like where if you have the mindset of like, hey, if I go and knock on a door, and if the door gets slammed on me, and if that's all they're thinking about, that how I'm gonna fail in the first door. Yeah. Well, what they don't see is there's 10 other doors, and maybe on door 9 or maybe on door 10. Maybe in the last door they get a success, right? Like where they pick up the phone or they open the door and they say, we're ready to sell a house. It happened to us. Remember that the one of our clients we sold a house, and I think we
talked about it in one of the last episodes.
Where there was a phone call that we made, and I was about to hang up and we were about to call it a day, and I said, let me just make one more phone call. Yeah. And I made that phone call, and we ended up getting the listing. We ended up selling it. We ended up double ending that listing.
That whole transaction was hilarious.
That was a great transaction.
From the time how we got the listing, I think we talked about that too. But there's an important lesson there, right, about knocking on doors or even making phone calls. Imagine if you knew sitting here that if you made 100 phone calls, if you knew for a fact that on the 90th phone call that you make, there's $25,000 or $50,000 waiting for you, would you stop at 10?
No, absolutely not. I'll just keep going. Or would you stop at 89?
Would you stop at 89, right? But the reality is most people do, right? Yeah. Most people do because, A, they don't have the conviction, the certainty that there is light at the end of the tunnel. There's gold at the end of the digging, right? People don't realize it, and they give up because mentally they're drained or blocked, and they don't know that there is. The fact of the matter is, you don't even need incredible phone skills or sales skills. If you're just consistently doing and making phone calls, somebody on the other side will say yes to you just out of sheer numbers and you making attempts to do it.
Absolutely. I think it's,
it's the mindset like you talked about.
Yeah. Failure is all about mindset. I feel that and not just, this is about business and entrepreneurship. Failures in life also happen. Like, when I got laid off from my job, and I could have just easily gone and found another job, but that's not what I chose to do. I chose to come into real estate. I started with making $0 again in real estate, and my first day, I felt like quitting because I was sitting by myself, didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
But I just kept coming in and coming in and coming in, and started just hitting the phones, and within a week, I started seeing results.
Yeah.
So again, like, I could have quit my first day here and gone back and got another job somewhere else, but again, I just chose to keep going, and now we are here.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much we can talk about on failure, right? I mean, most people not wanting to start something, but I think a lot of people also, it may not even be necessarily in the beginning, but even midway through their journey or what they're trying to do, they might say, that's enough, I've had enough, I don't want to do this anymore, and then quit. But I think it ultimately goes back to why you're doing everything to begin with, and then sort of remind yourself of that.
Exactly, right. And if you look at our journey through also within real estate, we started as resale agents, right? Then we pivoted to pre-construction. Pre-construction was really hot, and we just figured things out. There's a lot of failures there. Failure in terms of our MailChimp getting hacked on the day of a launch. We talked about that in previous episodes. Failures in terms of not getting allocations. That was a big failure for us. When we first started out, nobody knew who we were, even in the pre-construction world, and builders we're not giving you any allocations. And then we just grinded. We could have just stopped right there and say we've tried with 5 builders and nobody wants to give us any allocation, so let's just move on. But back to resale, but we didn't. We just, we grinded out. We started sending inventory for builders, and we slowly made a name for ourselves. And now we started getting out a lot of more allocations, right? So that, again, that was a learning experience for us.
I think everything works together in a way that ultimately brings you closer to your goal, right? And part of selling pre-construction was also effective ways to do lead generation. I remember when we first started lead generating, we would dump all kinds of money in lead generation. We've probably spent at least upwards of easily over $100,000
the first year.
The first year of just learning. And we weren't afraid to do it because we're like, we're going to fast track our way to do it instead of not doing it at all. And that $100,000 was probably the money best well spent because it taught us so much, and it accelerated our journey to lead generation, figure out all the things we're doing wrong. And then it finally brought us to a place where we had this nice, smooth running engine that puts everything in place. And it's funny, if we go back and look at what we had then versus what we have now,
night and day.
We would not have been in this position had we not spent all of that money and learned all of those lessons to bring us to the systems and processes we have right now to effectively have a smooth, self-generating machine.
Yeah, I totally agree, right? And and that's an important lesson. But that particular lesson was a very expensive lesson.
Expensive lesson,
right? Like we ended up spending a lot of money over the years.
But I think we've at least 10x'd our return on that.
Yes, we did. We did. But we didn't know that going in.
We didn't know that at the time.
Yeah,
yes, go on.
Yeah, no, we didn't know that going in, that if we spend $100,000 that we're going to get, we're going to 10x our return.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of that money was definitely wasted, to your point, because we didn't know what the hell we were doing. We were just trying out stuff at that point. And, just in business in general, we pivoted from resale to pre-construction. It was hot. And again, part of it was we also got lucky. Because pre-construction was hot. On the flip side, we were just not getting units to sell.
I want to go back real quick to, what we were talking about earlier, saying how we hadn't seen it coming. Right? And we didn't know if it was going to come or not. So that there's an element of, not an element, it's a huge element of risk involved there. So how important is risk? Because I think it ties so much with failure. If you don't take risks, there's no chance of failure. And if there's no failure, there's really no feedback loop for you to succeed from the mistakes, right? So I think a lot of people avoid failure and risk because they go hand in hand.
They do. And I feel that because people look at it from a very negative connotation, that risk is associated with failure. For me personally, I truly felt that risk is associated with success. Right? That if we did not take risks, we would not be here today. Like if you hadn't quit your job, if I hadn't quit my job, I wouldn't be. That was a big risk. I was earning a lot of money. You were earning a lot of money, right? And that was a risk. Had we not pivoted from resale to pre-construction, that was a big risk, right? We were doing so well in
Yeah,
resale.
it was a big risk.
And
Yeah.
we pivoted to pre-construction. That was a big risk. So again, like for a lot of people, that would have been like, oh my God, I'm going to fail. But for us, it's like, no, that was the recipe for success. So had we not taken those risks, we would not be successful. Another one would be, when pre-construction died down completely, we pivoted again
Yeah.
back to resale, and now we're doing a lot of inventory sales
That's
to
right.
builders. And so again, that was a risk, right?
Yeah.
Because we had a really nice pre-construction engine going.
Yeah.
We had a good thing going, but we risked it all again and pivoted back. So yes, to a lot of people, I think they just look at it from a very negative light of like, hey, like I'm not going to be a risk taker because if X, Y, and Z is going to happen if I take this risk, I'm going to fail. But again, if you just look at it from the light of, hey, yes, there may be steps of I may fail in step 1, then it'll take me to step 2. I may fail in step 2, it will take me to, and then the learning I'm going to take from all those 10 steps that I took to fail, and then I'm going to succeed. But people don't think out that far.
Yeah, I think with if you're going to take risks, you need to go in with the mindset that this is going to work. You need to have absolute conviction that I'm going to make this work and I'll figure out the how, but this has to work. If you're going and taking risks with like, I don't know if this is going to work and maybe there's I can fall back. I don't know if you're going to take those risks or the necessary steps or actions needed to get to where you really want to go. So I think you need absolute certainty. Like when you quit your job, when I quit my job, there was no other plan B, right? It's like we have to make it work. And I think that mindset alone makes you figure out ways and tap into resources that you otherwise wouldn't have if you have sort of a safety net of thinking there's a plan B, it's somewhere that I can fall back on. So it's important to, if you're risking and you're really going after it, failures aside, you need absolute conviction and certainty. Like this is exactly what I'm going to go for, and there's no other ways about it.
Absolutely, and that does not mean that we're going in fearless. I was afraid of shit.
Sure.
Like, I've always been afraid. Well, I was afraid when I quit my
What's
job.
What's that quote of fear? Fear is not courage. Courage is not the lack of fear. Courage is doing things with fear anyway, or something like that, right? Courage is doing things afraid, but doing it anyway.
But doing it anyway, exactly. Like, I mean,
You're still afraid, but you're doing it anyway.
you're doing it anyway. And my first cold call,
Yeah.
I was afraid as fuck.
That was the funniest phone call ever, dude. It's so funny. I wish we had that on tape somewhere.
It was the shittiest call ever. I was afraid as fuck.
Yeah.
But I did it anyway.
Yeah.
So I think you're right. Like if you go into whatever you're doing in life, if you're going with a mindset of, yep, I'm going to make this work no matter what. Yes, I'm afraid. Of course, I'm still afraid of a lot of things that we do still to this day. But I just feel like now we have enough conviction that, hey, if we keep trying, if we kept going, if we just kept going, we'll figure it out.
Yeah. Now, having said all of that, there's obviously elements of failure involved and risk involved. There are ways you can avoid failure and actually have a cheat code and really step closer to what you really want. And God, that's just learning from other people's failures, right? This is why it's so important to be under coaching or mentorship or podcast, listening to books, going to conferences, and investing in yourself and investing in things, because going back, had I hired somebody or had we hired somebody instead of spending $100,000, we would have ended up in the same place.
Yeah, I totally agree.
And if I had just hired somebody to fast track us, we would have ended up. Do I regret it? No. I think it's good that now we know how things work, but it could have been so much faster.
It could have been so much faster. Right? Like people think we're going to a conference next week.
Yeah.
To Vegas. I'm actually super excited about going to this conference. But again, it's the same point, is people think like, oh, it's $5,000 to go to this conference. Oh, it's like $10,000 to go to this conference. What people don't realize is, again, we're looking for the one nugget from that conference. You can come in and play in your business, or you can get a nugget that'll say like, oh shoot, I was about to do this, but thank God I didn't do it because it would have costed me $30,000.
It could completely change the trajectory of what you're trying to do. Yeah. You could meet a business partner, or have one idea, have one takeaway, one implementation that will completely transform your business, right? So there's ways you can avoid failure, avoid ultimately cost and money and time and resources by just, knowing the right people, being in the right rooms, the right programs, reading the right books. And I think, that has been part of our arsenal for the last few years, is we've invested a lot more into doing things like going to conferences, hiring coaches, because that's part of learning from our mistakes.
Yeah,
like we know we need to now bring us faster, a lot forward, and that's one of the ways to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And we continue to do it, right? Like we continue to learn. We continue to learn from others. Same thing. We go to conferences, reading books, whatever have you. It's still trial and error. Like
Yeah.
a lot of it that we still are doing is a lot of trial and error. And I think that'll just continue to happen because, as we try to elevate our game,
Yeah.
I think trial and error is, I keep saying trial and error, but it's actually failure. Like failure is very important because it'll say like, hey, we're not doing that again.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Right?
feedback.
It's
Yeah.
just feedback. But yes, like there's definitely ways of avoiding failure by learning from others. Whether coaching, mentoring, going to conferences, podcasts, whatever have you. So yeah, I truly feel that there is ways where you can minimize your risk,
Yeah.
or minimize failure.
Yeah.
You're still going to fail,
Right.
but maybe you don't fail to a point that
Right.
there's no coming back.
Exactly. Or you don't get discouraged, or you plan for those failures.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome, guys. Well, thank you again for joining us on an absolutely amazing episode. Hope you guys learned something from it. Once again, where can they follow us?
So they can follow us on TikTok, Broswhoclose, Instagram, Broswhoclose, YouTube,
Yeah.
Broswhoclose. I'm really liking Broswhoclose.
Broswhoclose. Yeah. And what else? Do we have anything else? Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok. I think that we covered it all.
I think we covered it all for now.
Give us a follow.
Give us a follow.
All right.
All right, Broswhoclose.